Welcome to another episode of Rectec Reels. I'm Rob Green, founder and CEO of Rectec, and today I'm joined by the legendary Gerald Morgan from DataMigrator, and we are going to be talking about all things data migration. Gerald, I think it's fair to say that you are an absolute expert when it comes to data migration. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and then I've got a few questions that I'd like to ask you.
Smashing. Thanks, Rob. Gerald Morgan, I founded DataMigrator back in 2006 when I left as a CTO of a startup. We had our own custom systems there, and we had to migrate them to an off-the-shelf system before I left as a director. That was our first migration, and we've been doing nothing but that since then. So.
And just for people that don't really know about data migration, can you just give us a quick overview of like what is data migration? Give us like a high level overview of what it is and why people need it.
Sure. Well, I mean, I suppose in general, data migration is moving data from one system or platform to another system or platform. It takes a variety of formats, but commonly when we talk about data, there's a process people might have heard of ETL, which is extract, transform, and load. So data migration is all of that. But with DataMigrator, we specialize in moving people from one recruitment or HR platform to another recruitment or HR platform. That's what our experience is.
Typically, that's when they're in the process of changing their CRM or changing their ATS.
100%, yeah.
And does that, I mean, again, I've never heard of ETL, by the way. What did you say it was called?
Extract, transform, and load. So you're pulling the data out, you're transforming it to how it needs to be, and you're loading it in the format it needs to be for the new system.
Because between solution providers, the way that data is kind of structured could be different, and you're basically taking how it's structured today, understanding what it needs to be, what it needs to look like in a new solution.
Yeah.
And that transition as seamless as possible.
Yeah. Exactly, and that's kind of even something as basic as address data can be stored differently between different systems, and it's just knowing all those different ways things are stored. That
makes total sense, and presumably that also presents opportunities for us to do other things with that data at that point in time. Do you want to give us a quick summary of those?
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, the big consideration once you've decided that you're going to move for all the right reasons to another piece of software, when there's an opportunity to do sort of things en masse that really improve your data. So first of all, there's deciding on what to move. But then the actual cleanup of the data is one of the core things that can be done during the process. So cleanup of data might be, well, let's get rid of some old records. We haven't contacted this person for 6 years. There's no activity records in the last 6 years. They'll go. These old jobs, they're 10 years old. Do we need them? However, we have got notes going back 15 years, and actually these notes are the thing that makes our agency database unique compared to pulling stuff off of LinkedIn. So maybe we want all of those. So there's all sorts of opportunities to filter on dates and statuses and set up some rules. And more often than not, those rules can be automated, and we just handle that en masse as we move to data.
Makes total sense. And why is data migration so important to a successful project?
So for a recruitment agency, there's clearly at least some useful data in their existing CRM. Depends how it's been used, but there's generally speaking, it's their lifeblood. It's the data, their candidates, their jobs, the information they hold on that is vital. So when you move to a new system, you can't just start with a clean slate. Well, you could, but you would have to really not value your data at all. So it's an absolutely essential process to make sure that when you go live on your new system, you hit the ground running from day one.
Yeah. And what about from the solution provider's perspective, that the software vendor that's providing the new solution? Presumably it's important to them as well to make sure that the process of migrating that data is successful. Why is it important to them?
Yeah, it's important to the if you like the target vendor for a number of reasons. I mean, ultimately, as a business, a vendor needs to get from a like a sale to annual recurring revenue or monthly revenue as soon as they can. But they want to do that by bringing the customer along in a satisfactory way, so the customer feels happy with the process as well. And being able to migrate data we hit the ground running because we know all these different systems, for instance. So if it was us doing it, we know exactly the process, so we can speed it up, we can make it accurate, and we can make it as complete or as white gloved as the customer requires. So I think the ability for the vendor to be able to go from that sale to that revenue with a happy customer
Yeah.
is absolutely critical. It's sort of where we often come in.
Customer success, and presumably like
Yes.
also they're interested in making sure that the timeline of that project is managed as efficiently as possible. And you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
data migration, I think a lot of people, and I've worked with hundreds of agencies and hundreds of employers that are moving from one system to another. And data migration is that one area that tends to kind of put chills up people's spine a little bit. It's the the fact that you're kind of going into so much history, and it's not a small task to
Yeah.
migrate data from one platform to another. And I think often it does kind of it can be a significant contributor that can impact to negatively on the timeline of a project. And everybody, when they start a project, they want to get that new platform up and running as quickly as possible.
Yes.
And data migration is such an important part of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess from the vendor's point of view, it's about making sure that the project concludes effectively, because I always say you
Mm.
never get a second chance to make a first impression, and that's engagement that the vendor has with the client is their
Yeah.
opportunity to say, this is who we are, you've bought our platform, we know what we're doing, we're going to get you to where you need to be as quickly as possible. And
100%.
engaging
Yeah.
with something like DataMigrator, I imagine is quite an asset. What about you? As I mentioned earlier, you are a total expert when it comes to data migration.
Yeah.
It's literally all you do. What's the sort of, I suppose, the hardest part of your role? You've done thousands of migrations over the years.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the biggest challenge for you when you're migrating data?
It's interesting. I think it's having there's a number of things, but having really clear communication lines and responsibilities. And that depends largely on our relationship with the target vendor, if you like, the company they're moving to.
Mm,
So sometimes we just kind of sit in-house almost like their department. So we work with their customer success team, and their customer success team already know that they've got certain questions to ask and expectations of the actual agency themselves. There's always homework for them to do. And them understanding that and getting that right at the beginning is also vital to the process. I think the challenges come more not from the structure of systems, because we know all of those now, but it's how these systems have been used. And you find that the larger the migration, so the bigger the company, the more users, the more years of history.
yeah,
This
and the
is
more
where you start finding oh well, why is Joe storing shoe size in the eye color field? We weren't expecting that. But so you get more variations on how data is stored, maybe less consistency. The system may have evolved over a few years as well. So you might find some records have data stored one way, some in another, even in the same system.
yeah,
So again, that comes down not to us being rocket scientists, but comes down to us being just having so much experience. We know
yeah,
to look for these sort of oddities. Um, I think then beyond that, there is sometimes an issue with the what you might call the legacy provider. It's the software that the agency is moving from, because obviously they don't really want that agency to leave. Um, so there's variations in how these software vendors behave. Some are just very, very frictionless. They say, look, we've tried everything to keep you. You're going. Here's your backup. Thank you very
yeah,
much. Others, I think, do sometimes perhaps engineer things in such a way to make it a bit tricky to leave.
yeah. Okay.
So what we find there is that what can sometimes help. We are effectively a neutral party. So you get some vendors who don't want to give what they consider to be their intellectual property to a competitor.
I see.
So we've sometimes intervened and said, look, we know all these schemas anyway. We're not sharing your intellectual property, we're sharing your customers' data. And that has actually greased the wheels on a few projects
And
over the last few years. Yeah.
works for the new solution provider. And what does that typically? I mean, I've worked on hundreds of implementation projects, so I've got a very, very good idea of what that entails. But just for those people that are listening
Yeah.
that don't really know about what gets migrated, just kind of can you outline that for us as well? Just what
Sure. So I mean, if we're talking, let's say there's all different varieties of migration. Some people may just want their core candidate data migrated and they'll build the rest up themselves. But a typical sort of full migration, it's in layers because everything interlinks. So the users go in because you're going to want to keep things like who owns these records, which of your consultants do these records belong to. So much more important for a recruitment agency than it is for an in-house team to have that info. Then you would load in your companies, company contacts, candidates, jobs, what we call job candidates, which is the intersection of a job and a candidate. It could be offers, placements, all of that interaction. Then activities, phone calls, emails, those sorts of things, and other notes. Your documents, of course, it's not just data, document attachments, CVs, contracts, and so forth. And then further down, you might want to bring in skill tagging and stuff like that. Or you may decide to leave the skill tags and say, right, the new software's so much better at parsing CVs,
anymore?
we'll leave them behind. You can make those decisions. And then nearly all source systems have a variety of custom fields, things that are added, custom fields, custom objects that are added as part of the configuration process for the agency at the time. And they need to be considered too. So they're the kind of typical things that we would see migrated on a full migration.
And like, last question, because I know I've asked you way too many questions.
Yeah, that's fine.
Hey, Gerald, I'm only going to ask you three questions, and here I am on about question 8.
Well,
I
you
was
see, data migration is such a riveting and exciting subject, you see, Rob. That's what this
yeah,
is. Yeah.
can't wait to get my hands on another one. I was thinking more along the lines of what you said earlier about sometimes, what the existing solution provider can offer in terms of that data and how it's presented. I'm guessing like sometimes as a user, you could probably log in and download a simple export and that might be
Yeah.
free. But also if you wanted, if you were one of those larger agencies and you were doing things in a slightly bespoke way and you did need some extra data that maybe you couldn't get from,
Yeah.
a tool like that, presumably then there are potential costs involved and that can impact timescales and things like that. Is that true?
Yeah. It's very true. So, I mean, where possible, we aim to use whatever the native format is. So whatever is naturally offered by the vendor they're moving from is what we'll work with. And I mean, without getting too techie about it, they might send an Oracle database or a Postgres database or a MySQL database or a SQL database, or it might be CSV files. We will work with the full native backup. So it's the least friction, if you like, and the least cost. You might get people involved in data migration. Maybe like the target vendors sometimes might expect the data to be formatted in a specific way, and that's where you get the friction in a couple of ways, because you're leaving as vendor, then you're saying to them, hey, listen, I want this data, but not in the way you normally do it. Can we have it in this really special format, please? Which is an opportunity for that vendor to go, right, well, of course, but it's gonna cost you and it's gonna take time.
And you can have it in 2027.
Yeah. Whereas, but by working with whatever the native system is, because we have all these platforms natively here, it means that that whole thing's cut out. Yeah, and I think let's say there is also this, let's say, the idea of the intellectual property side of things. We can grease the wheels a little bit there and say, well, it's only us seeing your schema, guys. Just give them the backup, and that's helped as well. So,
Gerald, it has been an absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Thank you for coming on the show, for agreeing to do a Rectec Reel with us. I hope everybody watching it has enjoyed this. And don't forget, if you are in the market for technology and you'd like to check out the right vendor for your business, whether that's an applicant tracking system or a recruitment CRM or a HR information system, make sure you check out rectec.io and check out Rectec Compare. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks again, Gerald.
Thank you very much.